Hello, Disruptors. I'm Karen Finney. Over 1 million Americans just lost a lifeline. And if nothing changes, another 4 million will be in peril before 2014 ends. But hey, at least one American is back at work after less than 2 weeks.
Breaking news on the Duck Dynasty star suspension.
Breaking news on Duck Dynasty.
The quack is in fact back.
In a lot of ways, the suspension was, if anything, symbolic.
The left may control Hollywood, but they don't control the hearts and minds of a majority of Americans.
This family is what they is what they are.
Do you have any objection on the manners aspect, how he said it?
He's on the wrong side of the way a majority of Americans feel.
I haven't read the article. I don't know exactly how he said it.
If you're out of work, you're out of luck.
Does it make sense for a country to borrow money from China to give it to the unemployed in America? That is weakening us as a country.
Merry Christmas, you know, you might not have a house for much longer.
It's weakening us as a country to extend unemployment benefits. Not only is this cruel, it's flat out wrong.
So it was a classic weekend news dump just before New Year's, no less. In politics, we call it putting out the trash because the hope is that no one notices the significance. A&E may have had similar hopes yesterday as they put out a little announcement that Phil Robertson will be back on Duck Dynasty when filming begins again this spring. Now, this means Mr. Robertson missed exactly 0 days of work while he was suspended for offensive comments about gay people and African Americans. The network said in a statement, quote, "Duck Dynasty is not a show about one man's views. It is a show about a family that America has come to love. As you might have seen in many episodes, they come together to reflect and pray for unity, tolerance, and forgiveness. These are 3 values that we at A&E Networks also feel strongly about." Now, there were a flurry of statements released in response to the announcement, but among the first to pounce was Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal, eager to defend his state's homegrown heroes and perhaps shore up some support from religious conservatives ahead of 2016. Maybe that's why he didn't actually have the courage to address the comments made about African Americans. In his statement, Jindal said, quote, "I'm glad to hear that the folks at A&E came to their senses and recognized that tolerance of religious views is more important than political correctness. Today is a good day for freedoms of speech and religious liberty." You know, I would also say that that statement means it's a bad day for honest dialogue about what tolerance actually means. Joining me now, social commentator Nancy Giles and Gregory T. Angelo, Executive Director of Log Cabin Republicans. Thanks to you both for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Nancy, I want to start with you because, you know, I found it very offensive, this idea that many on the right immediately labeled this as being about freedom of speech and freedom of religion, when I think so many of the rest of us heard anti-gay slurs and a real misunderstanding of, you know, African Americans and our history.
Slavery.
Yeah.
It's so, you know, this struck me on so many different levels. Number one, I loved your intro because that was the exact same thing I thought. All of these Americans, hardworking people who have earned unemployment, they're done. They're not getting any more support. This guy not only is punished but doesn't lose anything, but his job remains. And it's such intolerant speak.
Yeah.
It's everything that's kind of against, I think, any kind of religious, spiritual point of view. It marks an incredible twisting of history. Happier before civil rights? I don't think so.
Yeah.
The homophobic language also just very mean-spirited. I will say this, because I really do believe this. I thought it a couple of different ways. I think that A&E, I'm glad that they're keeping it on. I think people need to hear and see this kind of thing. It would be dishonest to try to edit that out. Like, there were some shows, I think CBS, my own network, had a show, Big Brother, where there was a very, very bigoted girl, and a lot of the stuff they're putting on the network was edited that out. People need to see. Now, what Bobby Jindal said, I just don't even know what to say. It's just, it bears no relationship to anything real. It's just I don't get it.
Well, you know, Gregory, I mean, it's interesting to me because I think this breaks down in a couple of different ways, right? There's the politics of it, which I understand why Jindal said what he said and the way that he said it. But then I think, you know, there really is, and I know you've talked about this a bit, this idea of, can we have a real conversation about tolerance? Can we have a real, honest conversation? And I think to Nancy's point, it is important. I have no problem with this being on television. I think people should watch it and make their own decisions. He obviously was perfectly free to make the comments that he made on GQ, in the GQ article. But I do think this is a statement that GLAAD put out, and I think they make an important point. They say, quote, Phil Robertson should look African American and gay people in the eyes and hear about the hurtful impact of praising Jim Crow laws and comparing gay people to terrorists. I mean, I do think it's fair to say that if you're going to be out there and make those kind of comments, then you're accountable for those comments when people have a reaction to them.
Yeah, what GLAAD also said is that A&E needs to get serious about having a dialogue with the gay community and the Robertson household. And that shows me that as log cabin Republicans, we have been right about this from the start. We were the only gay and lesbian advocacy organization calling for this to be an educational moment for the country and an opportunity to engage with Christian evangelicals in particular. So we can talk about intolerance all we want. We can talk about race in this country all we want and admonish those who have different opinions than we do. But unless we have a conversation, we're never going to move the needle in the right direction. And the fact that there was such a push from social conservatives on the right and others who are fans of the Duck Dynasty show, a show that has over 14 million viewers a week, the most popular reality television show in history, shows me that there is a demographic there that really needs to be engaged on this. If we want to have true equality around this country, we can't ignore those 14 million plus people that are fans of Duck Dynasty. We need to talk with them. And Log Cabin Republicans was the only organization advocating that from the start.
But you know, Nancy, I guess one of the things that strikes me, I mean, to the point that Gregory just made is, so when I go back to the politics of this and I think about the demographics, as you point out, of the people who are likely fans, and let me be clear, I know there are all kinds of fans all over this country, but in general, I think it is fair to say there is a demographic that is part of the base of the Republican Party, and it felt like in a lot of the comments we got, like from Jindal and others, it didn't feel like their goal was to try to inspire any kind of dialogue, and yet it was instead, and this is part of why I think so many kind of sort of took on the LGBT comments, sort of basically ignored the African American comments, tried to make it about religious liberty because they were trying to speak to that electorate rather than this bigger idea.
And it was dishonest because you can talk about freedom of speech. Everybody has freedom of speech. But that doesn't mean you can just say anything that you want that is untrue, offensive, without it really being taken, you know, being accountable for it. You're right. I agree with you. I think that there are ways to take something like this, where it's a really popular show with people that people have come to love, when they say something that I disagree with Bobby Jindal. This is not what most people in America agree with or want to hear.
Right.
I'm also offended by Annie saying, we're a network that believes in tolerance. Then how do you do? But I don't think shutting it down, you know, is good. I think there is a way to really talk. I wish they had the courage to work with that instead of the political ramifications, where all it does is it keeps the two sides split and not communicating.
Well, and to that point, Gregory, I mean, I know you've talked about, and I think you reached out to Annie about a moonshine summit.
Yes,
and
really? That's right.
So have you heard from Annie? I mean, you know, as you point out, they said, I mean, part of what they've said is we want to do PSAs, we want to, you know, have conversation. I think a lot of us are sitting back looking and saying, okay, let's see if that's sincere or is that a PR strategy? So I'm curious what kind of feedback you've gotten about the Moonshine Summit.
Well, I'm curious as well, because I have not heard back from A&E, and I think it's important to point out as well that in their statement, A&E said that they reached this conclusion to bring Phil Robertson back on the air after talking with numerous advocacy organizations.
Oh, is that
right? I don't know. GLAAD doesn't seem too happy with those results. Clearly, they didn't reach out to us. And by the way, that offer's still on the table for that what we're playfully calling a Moonshine Summit with the Robertson household. We just want to sit down conservative to conservative and talk about what unites us rather than what divides us, and use that as a moving point for dialogue. But no, we did not hear from A&E, and I wonder which advocacy organizations A&E consulted with before coming to this conclusion and releasing this press release at 5 p.m. on a Friday right before New Year's Eve.
Of course. of course. How convenient. Okay, so A&E, if you're listening, the offer for the Moonshine Summit still on the table. I don't know if they have your number, Gregory, but we'll make. Okay, you've got his number. You should give him a call because I think your point is so well taken. Let's also look though at the business of A&E here because ratings were down 22% among adults 25 to 54, even though they did a sort of a weekend-long, I believe it was like a marathon of the show. But Duck Dynasty, their economic power, 11.8 million viewers for the August season premiere, and about 400 million in merchandising. So Nancy, obviously, it's a big business, right?
I know. And it's all about money. I know. Money, making more money. And if there was a show, let's say, with a group of black folks saying all kinds of things, offensive things about white people, and maybe it didn't get the same amount of audience, there would be a lot of uproar, blah, blah, blah. Not everything should just be about money, but I guess I live on planet, nice. I just want to make one quick point, because I was thinking about what you said about conservative. These guys are giving conservatives a bad name, in my opinion, because conservative does not necessarily mean bigoted, does not necessarily mean homophobic. And I'm remembering a moment in this documentary, The Times of Harvey Milk, and you met all these people that were in San Francisco, because not everybody in San Francisco was like gay friendly.
Right.
There was some dyed-in-the-wool working class guys who were very skeptical about Harvey Milk and what he did, and they worked with him, and then they really got into it. And that would be the kind of thing that I think would be amazing to see a whiskey, moonshine. What did you say?
Moonshine.
A moonshine summit.
Where, he knows his audience. Come on.
and let's bring it, make it a moonshine soul food summit, because I don't know how they're going to look me or anybody in the eye and say, you were better off before civil rights, and you liked being a slave.
Right.
The singing, the dancing, the songs.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Gregory, would you be open to maybe inviting conservative African Americans, if it's going to be conservative to conservative, or even maybe a few progressives?
I think it's very important to point out that Log Cabin Republicans has numerous black gay Republicans, black lesbian Republicans. We have them on our national board of directors, and they're part of chapters around the country, including in Louisiana. So, yeah, you better believe that we want to open this up to represent as much of the diversity that we have in the organization as possible, if and when this actually occurs. But my point is just coming from, I think this is a conversation that needs to come from the right. It needs to be gay conservatives that make this case, because we have more in common than we do that separates us. And I think we're at a polarized point in this country right now where in order to even get that conversation to begin, you need to sit down with people that you have more in common with than
or at least
automatically
that you
differs.
perceive you have more in common with. Because I do think that part of the problem of the polarization is we perceive we have so much less in common than we may actually have in common if we could get past some of the labels. I'm going to do a final question to you, Gregory, because I think Nancy made an important point. I do think that things like this give conservatives a bad name, because some of the viewers of my show are going to be shocked to hear me say this, but I have a lot of friends who are conservative, and they're not bigoted people, and they're not racist people, and we just disagree, and it's pretty much just that simple. So I wonder, though, for you, do you feel as a conservative, I've heard you talk about, you're a person of faith. As you say, you have common ground with these folks, but will they, have that conversation? Does it make you feel like it gives conservatism a bad name?
Well, we continue to have conversations like this around the country. The fact that we're the latest group to propose having a conversation with Phil Robertson is just the latest conversation that we want to have. The fact that we continue to engage with Republicans, the fact that we've had a banner year in 2013, where we have had 3 sitting Republican United States senators come out in support of marriage equality, and Republican legislatures around the country vote for marriage equality, shows the importance of engaging with conservatives. And the fact that I'm right here, the fact that Log Cabin Republicans exist, shows that there are good conservatives out there. You need not be white and gay to be a member of Log Cabin Republicans. We have black gay Republicans that are part of Log Cabin Republicans, all different faiths, and we have straight people of faith who are part of our organization as well.
Okay, straight liberal people that are part. I guess not. Okay,
but Nancy and I are so A&E, Gregory, he's here. He's happy to get this Moonshine Summit. Maybe Nancy and I could come.
Yeah, I know.
We're polite. We'll be very polite. And okay. Thank you, Nancy Giles and Gregory Angelo.
Thanks. Pleasure.